Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming my best books of 2024. My highlights, my favourites, the gushing. So I just love gushing. So this is just a great time for me to gush about everything that I loved last year. So I do have a top 10 and we'll be working our way up. I don't think everything is quite in the right order, but we're going to work our way towards the top. Let me know now if you can guess anything that you anticipate is going to be in this list, and we'll just dive straight in. I did also want to highlight that there were some series or books that I thought were big parts of 2024, but I don't think any of them were like favourite books, but they were such a staple of the year that I'm going to just flag them first. The first of that being the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Raybourn. So I read 8 books in that series over the course of 2024. I don't think none of them were like 5 stars, none of them were favourites, but I had a solidly good time through that whole series. It's not quite finished yet. I do have book 9 on my 2025 plans, but and I don't know how many more might come in the series. And none of the books have been like absolute favourites of all time, but it has just been such a staple of the year. So the first book, you're following the main character Veronica, who is a lepidoporist, which is a butterfly scientist and collector. And at the beginning of the book, her guardian dies and she gets taken off to London and then suddenly embroiled in these different murders that are happening and this whole big investigation. And each book sort of stands as its own story, and they're each individual sort of murders or mysteries that Veronica and her companion Stoker are investigating. They're all about 300 pages each, so it's very easy to fly through them. They're all quite engaging. There's this sort of like slow burn romance that goes through the whole series that just builds as it goes on. And I would just say that I pretty much read them pretty steadily throughout the whole year. They were all very solid, roughly about 4 stars. That I don't think I had anyone that I particularly didn't enjoy, that they were all just very solid entries in a series. Easy to read, great books to just intersperse in between the heavier, more epic books, so I would definitely recommend the series. The other one is that I read quite a bit of Carissa Broadbent this year, so I read all of the Daughter of No Worlds trilogy as well as the third book in the Crowns of Nyaxia. I don't think they were quite like favourites, but they were all very, very solid, and I have had a very, very good time overall with Carissa Broadbent. And I do think like that series as a whole, that Daughter of No World series, I would count as something that I thoroughly enjoyed, but I just don't think any single entry within that series would constitute being like a favourite of all time. Daughter of No Worlds is a fantasy romance series following a main character, Tizana, who has been kept in slavery, and at the beginning of the first book she attempts to buy her freedom. Everything goes a little bit wrong and she ends up running to this other country which she believes is going to give her a better life because they have magic there, and it from the outside looks like a better place to live. And she goes into training at this school for magic under the tutelage of Max, who is our male main character, and it's sort of them coming together and the different politics at play within this world. Tizana hoping to free her fellow slaves from where she's from originally, and realising that there's also a lot of political things at play in this current country that she's living in that isn't all rosy and as golden as she anticipated when she was looking at it from an outsider's perspective. So those were just like some other highlights that I had. Now, moving into the actual like top 10. Unfortunately, I do not have any books to hand because everything that I have out is pretty much TBR. So we don't really have much to show right now. So it's all going to be with pictures. That doesn't mean that I don't love the books. I do own all of the books. They're just all in boxes. So it's what it is. I did thoroughly enjoy the Bloodsworn series this year. So I reread the Shadow of the Gods and the Hunger of the Gods, and then I read the Fury of the Gods. So the whole series I just thoroughly enjoy. This is all by John Gwyn. I do have a series review of this. I also have a guide to John Gwyn because I've read everything that he has written. I absolutely adore this man's books. They're very epic fantasy, classic. It's sort of good versus evil, but epic battles, epic like twists and turns. I think he does pacing really well so that you're constantly engaged. The Bloodsworn Saga has a Nordic setting. You've got a cast in the first book of like 3 main characters, one of them being Orca, who's a mother figure who's like thrust off on this mission due to some horrific circumstances. You have Varg, who's an ex-slave, and him entering into a warband, and then you have Elvar, who is part of a separate warband, and then trying to discover that there are some riches. And it's just following all of them in this very Norse gods epic world, which just sounds very horrifying. I think I'd be dead by now, like I'd die very quickly there, and the dead gods are potentially rising again. I did thoroughly enjoy that. I think it was wrapped up really well, and yes, I will link that review. I then have a few series that I started. I do have quite a few like starts of series on this list, ones that I have that I like read and I'm up to date on. Not so many like continuations really, actually. Apart from that Bloodsworn Saga. Anyway, so I started the Chronicles of Castellane, the first one being Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, and I had such a good time with this one. I knew that I would. I've read majority of what Cassandra Clare's written, and you know there's some ups and downs with her. So I read all of the Shadowhunter books, which they are extensive. There is a lot of those books. There is a little bit too many, I think, of those books. It's been a little bit like overdone, but I think she is a very good writer at her pacing, at having a great mixture between plot with a little romantic subplot that she just always creates drama, always drama. And this is her first adult book, and I had such a good time with this. I had such a good time. We've got 2 main perspectives, one of them being called Kell, who is the prince's swordcatcher. So this means that he stands in when there is a potential threat to the prince. He sort of looks like him, so he'll go into official functions pretending to be the prince. And they have grown up fully together. And then we're also following Lynn, who is a healer and has some of the magic within this world. And not many people have magic anymore. And it's the whole politics at play within this country. And you sort of see these 2 characters as their lives cross in slightly odd ways. There's also a lot of focus on the underworld and the criminal underworld within the city, and I think that's going to have a lot more to play in the future books. It all comes to a little bit of a head at the end, so it's all quite building towards it, and it's quite political and slower, I think, than her other books, but I had a lot of time. I enjoyed her characters. I like the way that she does her characterization, and I feel as though it's a lot of really good setup for the rest of the series. Another series starter that I think was a really good entry point to a series, and I really hope that the rest of the book continue to be as strong, is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is the first book in a fantasy romance series. It's all a bit twisty-turny and a little bit lyrical, and you sort of don't really know what's going on for the first bit, where you're sort of just trying to get settled with everything, and you have different timelines running, but we're following a main character who is working for like a criminal organisation. She's like tasked with different murder or assassinations. She's an assassin. We start the book as she is assassinating someone, and someone witnesses this, and it's all this intrigue between these 2 people, and do they know each other, or have they known each other in a past life, and what is their relationship dynamic going to look like? I feel so, this book is a little bit hard to describe in knowing like what you can say and what you can't say, so I'm definitely intrigued to see where this goes from here. It's got a really interesting world where there are dragons, and when the dragons die, they like go up into the sky as like these moons. So the world is now surrounded by these dead dragon moons. A standalone that I read right at the beginning of the year. I've had quite a good run of reading 5-star books to start the year, because it has happened again in 2025. I've read one of my favourite books as my first book of the year, but this one was the one that I had for 2024, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson, which is one of his secret project standalones that he released. It is set within Cosmere, and you're following 2 characters, one called Yumi, one called the Nightmare Painter, and they live on separate worlds. Yumi lives in this place which is sort of quite desert-like, and every day, or quite regularly, she travels from town to town, and she has to build these stone statues, or where you pile stones on top of each other as delicately as possible so that they create art. And then if it is an impressive stone standing, it will attract magical beings to it, which can then be used to like fuel somebody's home or light it or any which thing. And then the Nightmare Painter is set in a separate, much sort of like dark world, I would say, and this city is sort of being attacked by these nightmares, and so you have these painters that go around and they trap the nightmares and stop them from harming people. So that is his job, and these two people start connecting or being connected and are able to spend their sort of like time together visiting each other, and it's their sort of exploring the different worlds and their relationship. It's quite a romantic leaning Sanderson, so I did really thoroughly enjoy it. I liked the world, I liked the way that was explored, some of the cosmic connections, but also the romance between these two people and seeing everything progress. Another standalone, very different than the previous one, is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Katherine Arden. This is a historical sort of fantasy, but more like a magical realism book. It's set during, I think it was World War II, and we have two main perspectives. One being, I've forgotten everybody's names and I don't have the books, so you're just getting female main character and male main character. I'm very sorry for all of this, but you've got the female main character who has been sent home from the war. She has been a nurse there, but following some injury, she ends up getting sent home back to Canada. While she is there, she receives the possessions of her brother, who has still been fighting the war, and she doesn't know what's happened to him. So you start following her as she starts investigating what has happened to her brother. Is he dead? Is he alive? What has happened to him? Because she doesn't feel satisfied with the answers that she's got. So you follow her as she journeys back to France to investigate where is her brother. And then you also follow the brother's perspective from the point of where he goes missing and what is happening to him and the struggles that he's going through within the war. And that's where you get the sort of magical realism twist coming into it. I think it's quite a harrowing book. It's not the most easy of reads. I mean, the topic is like World War II, which isn't something I naturally like gravitate towards, but I gravitate towards Katherine Arden because I've loved the Winter Night Trilogy, which she wrote. And I do still think the Winter Night Trilogy is my favourite of her work, but I did absolutely thoroughly enjoy this one. And her writing, I just really like her writing, the way that she constructs sentences. It felt as though she really took her time with each of the sentences and the paragraphs, and the way that she constructed the whole book. It felt like a work of art, and that she really thought about everything that went into it. And I was like, I can really tell this is an author that knows what she's doing and what she's putting out. And I think it did take her quite a bit of time to write the book, that it had been something that she had been working on for quite a while, but everything just felt very well put together. I'm not somebody with much literary training, but that's how it felt to me, that I was going, okay, that word is like, there was lots of really poignant words, I think, that really evoked a lot of emotion. And then another series that I started and that I really thoroughly enjoyed, that was sort of like snuck up on me, is The House at Watch Hill by Carm Moore. And I have read the Fever series, or the first 5 books in the Fever series by her, so I sort of went in with these expectations that I was going to like it, but I really thoroughly enjoyed this one, and it sort of like has stuck with me. So I read it in October time, and reading it I was like, this book's slow, but I just can't put it down. But it's slow, but I can't put this book down. But nothing's really happening, but I can't put this down. And I'm sort of just intrigued by everything that's going on here, and I just can't put this down. So you're following our main character who, her and her mum have travelled quite a lot growing up, so they've moved from town to town, and right at the beginning of the book, her mum dies. Her mum had been suffering from presumed like cancer, and so she'd always been at risk, but she ends up getting, they end up having a house fire, and her mum does not make it out. The daughter is now sort of like left alone in this world, where she receives this call saying, you are the heir to this massive fortune and you need to come to Watch Hill to be able to claim it. And when she's there, she gets all these different rules and regulations for her to be able to claim this big inheritance, which she had no idea about. And it's all this creepy, twisty, it is quite gothic and very October leaning as she investigates what's going on, and it's all quite witchy. It's like witchy covens and magic. The book does sort of act a little bit like a prologue for, I would say, the rest of the series. I think it's a trilogy, but I feel as though it could be longer. I don't know. But I'm definitely very intrigued to see where this one goes and see what's going to happen next, because I feel as though we're going to get a lot more expansion and world building in the sequel. Moving away from fantasy, we do have one romantic entry, and that's Funny Story by Emily Henry. Emily Henry is like my go-to favourite romance author. I read everything that she's written in terms of adult romances. I haven't read her like YA books from years ago, but Funny Story was her latest release that came out in 2024. It's just so fun, and it was just so fun. Like, I find her books just so fun and engaging. So you have the male main character is called Miles. Female, it's gone, and both of their partner, fiancés, girlfriend break up with them because they get back together. So they think they're living great lives. Their partners hook up, and so they end up going, we can't afford like our rent, let's move in together, as our partners have forced this situation upon us. So they move in together. They're both quite depressed and unhappy because they've had this shocking betrayal, and it's them sort of finding this friendship and then potentially more as the book goes on. But I did really enjoy their dynamic together and seeing that all unfold. And now moving into the top three. So these are definitely like the top three, I would say. That these are the favourite ones, the top. So I read the first two books in the 5 penalty series, The Helm of Midnight and Cage of Dark Hours, and I absolutely adore them both. I really strongly recommend this series. The third book is coming out in January, or towards the end of January, so I'm really looking forward to reading that in February, and I really hope it sticks the landing. This is all by Marina Losta. So in the first book, and this world, it has this very intriguing magic system, which I think just slowly gets unveiled as the series goes on. But within the first book, you know that there are these helmets, these hats that people can wear. And when you die, you can choose to put your like psyche into a helmet. For example, if you're a doctor, you can put all of your medical knowledge into this helmet, and then somebody can wear that and they can gain that knowledge. But also your personality can start seeping into that person. So you have to have this level of control to be able to wear one of the helmets. And at the very beginning of that book, of the first book, a helmet that has been kept under a lot of guard because it is the helmet of a serial killer gets stolen, and murders start happening again in the same style of that serial killer. So we're following the investigation from our main character, Corona's perspective, as she is trying to trying to get this helmet back and stop these murders from happening. You also have 2 other perspectives which are set in slightly different timelines, and it's really intriguing to see how it all like weaves together. But the magic system in this is just so intriguing. It's not just like a murder mystery in a fantasy world. You do have this like very intricate magic system with these like creatures and the way everything sort of connects that I just really thoroughly enjoyed. I think it was so well crafted and put together, and I really hope the third book sticks the landing. I'm crossing my fingers that it does. I have faith after those first 2 books that it's all gonna work out. I think it will, because the second book did exactly what I wanted by like expanding the world and giving me more. You've got a couple of different perspectives that come into play alongside Corona continuing on, and it just perfect vibes. So I would strongly recommend the series. I don't think it gets enough hype. I don't think it gets enough love at all. But it's so underrated. I mean, I had it on my shelves for quite a while, and I finally read it for a vlog, which I did, which I can link, and which I dive into some of my more full thoughts on that first book. Thoroughly enjoyed. Okay, and then another one which I have a vlog for is Rhythm of War, which was one of my like big targets, goals to read in 2024 was to read Rhythm of War. I did not read Wind and Truth. That's going to be somewhere in 2025. But I did manage to read Rhythm of War. I do have a full vlog with my thoughts. I have a vlog for each book in the series, so I can link the playlist as well as that 4th book, which I did read in 2024. Loved it. I knew I would. I knew I was going to love it. It's just quite a dedication to read because these books are so big. Rhythm of War, if you do not know, is the 4th book in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. The Stormlight Archive is his big epic fantasy series. They're all over 1,000 pages. It's chunky, it's a dedication, and you have a whole cast of characters. The first book, it starts off with the murder of the king, which then incites a big war between the Alethi, which is sort of like a human kingdom, and the Parshendi, which are these more alien people or fantastical people, and it is them having this big sort of ongoing battle that's been going on for many, many years following the murder of the king on the Shattered Plains. And you have all these different people that are coming together over these battles. So you follow one of the perspectives of this slave slash soldier Kaladin and his experience going into these different battles. You have the general, like the leader, Dalinar, and his son Adolin. You have Shalon, who in the first book is more like separated and entering into a wardship with one of the princesses because she is trying to learn about the different magics within this world and protect her family. But it all definitely expands a lot from there. There's a lot of expansion as we learn about the real forces within this world and this sort of good versus evil and the different battles at play, and there's lots of twists and turns and understanding of the scope of everything as the series goes on. So I did absolutely adore the fourth book. I do have a full like spoilery vlog of my thoughts as I went through it and my reactions as I read the book, which I do find the book so fun and thought-provoking to read that I just become obsessed with like different theories and thinkings and ideas as I go through them, which is a different experience to some other books, because I feel as though some books I just read and I experience it and I enjoy it at the time, whereas with the Stormlight book I then spend ages of time when I'm not reading the book thinking about the book and theorising and coming up with like, oh, this could mean this and this could mean that and that could like link to that. Like they definitely do, they give me a bit of like a mental workout, not in a like challenging way because I think they're very easy to read, like they're very digestible, but in terms of links and crossovers and trying to spot different things, because I have read the majority of Sanderson's books now, so you can sort of see the different links between some of his works. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. Would definitely recommend the series if you have not started it, and just Sanderson as a whole. And then the final book or series that I would like to recommend and is in my favourites of the year is the Dreamer's Pool trilogy by Juliette Marillier. So I read the whole trilogy this year, so this is in for the whole trilogy. I just love Juliette Marillier. I just love her books. I don't know why I didn't do a series review of this because I really should have done. Anyway, Dreamer's Pool is the first book in the Blackthorn and Grimm series. Each of the books sort of stands alone, but it is like a whole series. Like there is an element, there is sort of like a fantastical mystery type thing in each book that is an individual element, but there is an overarching sort of plot and character progression that goes through the whole series. Juliette Marillier has a sort of element or concept that sort of she has throughout the books that I've read from her, because I've also read Daughter of the Forest by her, and that's that her books are set in Ireland. They're quite foresty, they're quite folktale, fairy tale-esque, and they all have this slower vibe to them. Her books are slow, but I read them fast. I know that they're slow. I'm reading, I'm going, this is quite slow, but I cannot put you down, and I do not know why, but I find them really compulsive to read, even though I can acknowledge that they are slower. So Blackthorn and Grimm starts off in a prison cell, and both Blackthorn and Grimm are there, and Blackthorn knows that she is going to be tried and hung the next day. And in the middle of the night, she gets a visitor from one of the fairies or fae who says, if you are able to like do good for the next 7 years, then I will free you from this. These are the rules and specifications that you need to follow. You cannot seek revenge. You cannot do X. You must do good. You must heal anyone that says that they need help, but you will be freed. And Blackthorn just really wants her revenge. She really wants her revenge for the crimes that have been committed against her. But she agrees to do this, and she is a healer, that's her profession. And so she agrees, escapes, and Grimm follows her. You mostly follow them. In that first book, you also follow a young prince and his potential new bride, and there is, in each of them, as I said, a sort of fantastical mystery that Blackthorn and Grimm end up getting sort of drawn into. I really like the setting. I find it quite cozy and comforting. I mean, her books do deal with some like harder topics, that they aren't the lightest of reads, because she does always bring in some real world traumas. That they definitely aren't light books, I do find them quite comforting, and I think that's because of the setting and the way that she constructs them. I found that every book in the series was really well done. Like, there wasn't a weaker point. I think, yeah, it all wrapped up in a really satisfying way at the end of the third book. So overall, I just recommend the whole trilogy, and I do definitely want to continue reading more from Juliet Maria. I definitely have a lot of her backlist to continue working on, which just is really exciting because I love it when I have a whole lot of bibliography that I can keep reading. Anyway, those are my best books of 2024. All of my favourites, everything that I loved, everything, all the highlights. Let me know if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on any of them, and what were your favourite books of 2024. Thank you so much for watching over the course of 2024 and hopefully into 2025, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!